So super excited to dive in with my good friend Nichelle, the OG of the HRC, the unofficial historian of all things Nancy Pelosi, a huge Hillary supporter, a huge Kamala supporter, but a more center Democrat. So excited to pick your brain on all things happening in the party.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. You gave me such an amazing level. I have so much to live up to. So,
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. So, I guess to dive in, since you are the number one fan of Nancy Pelosi, I've been seeing so many ads. I don't know if you have, I'm sure you have, of her primary challenger, sort of a guy that I believe was the chief of staff to AOC early on, really helped with the Justice Democrats getting them established, and kind of I don't want to say resigned in scandal, but he did resign over a tweet that was controversial, criticizing other Democrats. And so, if you want to just share a little bit about his background, if you know it, because I'm sure you do, and then talk about his race against Pelosi in SF, and if you think he will succeed in sort of flipping that seat to a more leftist voice.
right. So this is what I do know is that Pelosi every 2 years does always have a more leftist primary challenge. And she always does her thing and brings it home. What's very interesting is she has not announced what she's doing yet. So I think it's just interesting that everyone's like, oh, these polls are saying he's in the lead. She announces every November, a year out before midterm. So she hasn't even announced yet what she's planning on doing. So for me, I think it's a lot of distraction. I think, whatever she decides to do, we shall see. I know she's older and that there are a lot of Democrats who have become ageist in the last 10 years. But I feel like, I just interviewed her, not that this summer, I interviewed her twice, and girlfriend still got it going on. I mean, there were no notes. I didn't say beforehand what I was going to talk to her about. It was just like boom, boom, boom. She got it, nailed it. So I think it's a distraction. I think that he has every right to run, and just like anyone does. And I know he has the AOC leftist background kind of pushing him along, but I don't, if she wants that seat, it's her seat. I know that district pretty well. I've gone there a handful of times. I grew up in the Bay Area. So, anything is possible, but it's still, she hasn't announced what she's going to do yet. So no one knows.
And boy,
She
does he
doesn't
have a
know.
ton of money. I think right through he was
Yeah.
early at a huge tech company. I forget if
Mhm.
it was like eBay or something,
I
something of
think
that
it was
level,
eBay.
right?
I believe it was
Yeah,
eBay.
so he has
Yeah.
like $100+ million that he
Yeah.
can spend on this. And there's a little bit of irony there that, you
Right.
do have a lot of these folks on the left that have a lot of money to spend on these races, and they
Mhm.
bash folks like Pelosi. Now, I do think obviously Pelosi is up there, and I do think
Yes.
that there has been a lot of criticism of older folks not knowing when to tap out. I thought it was really interesting though, because I was interviewing Ro Khanna the other day, and I was kind of asking him because he's sort of doing that, we need new leadership, new guard, that sort of
Mhm.
talking point that we've heard now for a decade, really, I think, at the
Right.
Democratic Party. And I just asked him, well, what do you think about Bernie Sanders running again? I had a piece last year at msnbc.com saying, like, he's old. Where's his legacy? Why hasn't
Mhm.
he, been able to develop any talent in his state? And especially, I'd say, when he's purportedly leading this movement, you would think when
Mhm.
you're leading a movement like that, you have so many people that you would ideally have organized with and developed over time. And it doesn't seem like that exists. And his response was kind of, he's an iconic American senator who's not in leadership. I
Yeah.
didn't know if it didn't really sell to me, because Nancy Pelosi is an iconic,
Yeah. Yeah.
not in leadership individual as well. And I'm not
Yeah.
sure that the left would have the same take. How do you see it? Like, what would be the right time for her to step down?
I honestly think, I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I feel
Yeah,
like she wants to get us through the Trump era. I think that also what people don't realize is how much she fundraises for the Democratic
right,
Party. And I know we're against big money, but unfortunately, because of Citizens United, this is where we have to be, and we have to
right.
raise a lot of funds. And once she's out that door, she can't fundraise in the same capacity. So she stepped down from leadership a handful of years ago. Hakeem took over. And, she doesn't have leadership. She's one of 435 House members. I mean, honestly,
Right.
I don't, she does her thing. She goes back home and does her thing. So I don't know when is the right time to tap out. I respect her. And like I said, I just interviewed her, and girlfriend still she knows she knew more than I did. I was like, "You're the smartest person in this room right now, so I'm just gonna let you do your thing." I'm gonna respect that about her, but I really feel like she wants to get us through this, and she can add so much to this like, she can help us so much in this craziness. But I don't know. I mean, I would love for her to go home and be able to enjoy her life, and, she's dedicated her adult life to being of service. So, I don't know when the right time is, but I feel like she already did the movement. She moved away from leadership and she's just doing her thing for her district. So I'm not sure when the right time is, but we'll
Yeah, no,
see.
I
We'll
think, like,
see.
I really do see it as, like, case by case because there's such a wide
Yeah.
range. It really is, like, I mean, obviously
Hmm.
age is a factor, but you could be, 80 and at top of your game or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it really comes down to luck. And I think, in New York, the big discussion is who's going to replace Jerry Nadler. And I think that was a great example of somebody who said, well, look, I've been paying attention to this conversation and I do feel like it's time for me to step back. Now, of course, last cycle, he was falling asleep that campaign.
Right.
And so, in fairness, it did seem like it was
Yeah.
time.
It was
Um,
tied.
and,
Yeah.
like, even that,
Yeah.
like, I was pretty impressed with him because he was sort of talking about who he would like to take over or
Hmm.
not take over for him. And
Yeah.
he didn't endorse somebody, but he kind of it's sort of positioned that this assemblyman that's been a longtime ally is who he'll back ultimately. And uh Jack Schlossberg, who's like an influencer and a Kennedy, was putting out feelers and like saying he wanted to run for the seat. And actually, I overlapped with him in law school, and I was like kind of thinking to myself, like, really, like, what have you done yet? Like,
Right.
and
He's a
not in a
Kennedy.
good
That's
way.
what he's done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And like to his credit, Nadler was like, I have no problem with the Kennedy
I.
taking the seat. It shouldn't be him. He hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I thought that was interesting because it is a reminder. I do feel like so many of the people running now that want to be the leaders of the party in the next generation are very focused on their own star and how that star
Mhm.
can rise. And that's totally valid. And I'm sure these older folks were like that at a time. But to have somebody like Pelosi in the back seat, it's really not
Mhm.
about her.
Mhm.
Just being a resource and an institutional thinker like that is, I think, so important. And
Mhm.
it is interesting to see also, Jeffries, who I had somewhat high hopes for, I will say, and I can't say that I've been pleased or impressed or reassured by anything we've seen. And I really, and I know you are the same as well, try to give the benefit of the doubt to the people doing the work on the ground because I do assume they have a lot more information. And of course, they're trying to hold a coalition together on a
Mhm.
couple of things. I want to hear your take. So I think
Mhm.
it's ridiculous the back and forth on endorsing or not endorsing Mamdani. I think they should have ripped that band aid off one way or the other, by the way.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
personally think it's more strategic not to do it, but
Mhm.
whatever, there's arguments for the other way. To go on air every day and dodge the question makes everyone insane and makes it a huge story and makes it divisive and makes it so that no matter what outcome it is, you're going to piss off a whole lot of people. So I think that's incredibly strange. And then on the shutdown things, I got to say, like, the lines, like, hopefully Republicans will do the right thing. Like, who are those lines for? Do you
Yeah.
really think that? Because if you do, which I definitely don't think he thinks for 1 second, like, it's conflicting messaging because every other day you're saying they're fascist, they're authoritarian, they're violating the
Right.
law, which I think is much more close to the truth. So then to
Mhm.
say, oh, well, maybe they'll be reasonable, it just makes it so out of the moment, like, and really makes it hard for, I think, people that want to see folks like him succeed and want to focus on real policy solutions that can be delivered. When you have that wishy washy bad messaging, it really does open the door for more extreme people to get attention for talking points and going viral. What's your take?
So my take with Hakeem Jeffries is I was like you. I was excited, especially because like Pelosi chose him and got him ready. And, he waited a long time to be leader because Pelosi was supposed to retire in 2016, but then Hillary lost. And so she stayed and got us out of that hole. And so he wanted it. He wanted it. So, like, you would think if you were like waiting, you would be like ready. So by the time it happens, there's a chance Trump's coming back in. There's a chance you're not going to be in control. So, like, he should have been prepared. I feel like he's not prepared. I feel like he's a deer in headlights every single time that I see him.
Yeah,
I'm so tired of the like notorious BIG like rapping. We get it, you're from New York. Like we understand that.
act like
And
it.
I
Like,
yeah, and
please.
I
Like,
and I look at the mayor's race and I'm like you, like get in or get out. Like it's not this constant it could have been very easy. He could have been like, listen, this guy was not the biggest supporter of Kamala Harris. He told people not to vote for Kamala Harris. So I'm going to stay out of this one. It could have been like an easy fix and done. People were going to be upset with
Right.
him, and that's fine. But this constant back and forth and constantly going on cable news and things like that and not really having an answer, it just makes him look weak and it makes us look weak. And people are frustrated with that because he's the number one guy. And I think what a lot of Democrats aren't realizing is we were so spoiled for 20 years with Nancy Pelosi. She just, whether you like her or not, I don't really care, but she just handled it. And we didn't have to worry about any of this back and forth. If she said she had it, she had it. And so I gave Hakeem a lot of time and a lot of grace because I was like, well, he's not Nancy. So I'm expecting this one magical thing that Nancy always did, and Hakeem is not her. So but now I'm like, okay, dude, like you've been in leadership a while now and you're still not getting it. You're still not connecting. And now we're going into shutdown potential. And I feel like right now the meeting's happening. And I know that him and Schumer are going to be like, well, Trump, we don't want to do this, but how can we meet? And they're going to walk out there. And I would almost guarantee you they're going to come out with a stopgap bill to extend this by 7 weeks. And I feel like Schumer is no better, in my opinion. Like he's just as weak at times. And there's going to be no resolve. And Democrats in the real world out there are going to be upset. And they're
Yeah.
going to say, and we're 398 days away from midterms. So I feel like we're going to get a stopgap bill. And it's going to be like you said, every day you say these people are fascists, you say these people are A, B, and C, and then you're going to go in there and you're going to make a move with them and say, we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's very mixed signals going on. And they need to figure that out.
I remember actually you were one of the people like that kind of got me a little excited about Jeffries in the beginning because you had told me all about sort of how Pelosi
Yeah.
had served as a mentor for him for
Yeah.
so many years and really been focused on him taking her place. So what do you think the disconnect is, I guess, just from that perspective? Like, do you think he understands the legislative tools at his disposal and he's good at that piece and maybe just a little less shrewd at the media piece? Or is it kind of all of it?
I think that he understands the legislative process. I think that he probably could be good at quote unquote counting the votes. Like she was always great at the vote count, right? But I think that there are some things you can't teach someone. And I think you either have it or you don't. And I think that he checked off a lot of boxes for her and she was excited and he was ready to go. I just think we're living in unusual times and he's just not meeting the moment. Who
Yep.
knows how he would be if we had a Democratic president, right? Like who knows if he would be thriving and drive. But that's not where we are right now.
Right.
We're at war and we need a leader desperately. And I always say to people all the time, one leader is not going to make or break us. It's going to take all of us to sort of halt all this craziness going on. But we do need a leader to sort of steer the way. And Hakeem is constantly changing his mind and constantly moving, and it's not good, and
Well,
it's
and
very disappointing.
it's like sort of easy to blame it on personality or demeanor, but it's kind of funny because Mike Johnson, for all
Right?
the rounds that it took to get him in,
Yeah.
was incredibly weak, has no backbone, has no personality, and somehow acts like the biggest thug ever. So,
Yeah.
he does what Trump wants. He gets his party in order. Obviously, they have the votes to do a lot of that
Right.
stuff. So it's not all him. But I'm just saying, like, there's been moves that he's pulled. He does the most ridiculous interviews, and somehow it's landing differently. So that's pretty disappointing. I also think Chuck Schumer really has similarly perhaps just been doing what he's been doing this whole time, but because the moment has changed, and
Yeah.
maybe because he doesn't have somebody like a Pelosi as his
Mhm.
counterpart to kind of lead on some of at least the narrative crafting, is getting hammered, is really pissing off and alienating Democrats. And of course, I think a lot of those folks are still going to show up and vote for Democrats. At the same time, it's not changing any new hearts and minds. And then you do have these sort of more exciting, more digital first, younger leftist candidates that are getting a lot of attention. And it doesn't seem like they've been able to harness any of the tools of folks like Jasmine Crockett or the younger, more like Ossoff, right? Like,
Mhm.
and excite people about that in the same way. So it's been interesting to see.
Mhm.
Is there anything that makes you hopeful about
Yeah.
the team we have?
I mean, honestly, in all like I hear through my sources, like Amy Klobuchar is really like behind the scenes, like controlling a lot of the narrative. She's out there always doing cable news. She's very, very smart. I think she should be our minority leader. I look at her and I'm like, she is cutthroat. She is, intense, but man, oh man, I would give anything to have that. So I just think that Amy Klobuchar gives me hope. I pray that, she's able to take the reins at some point because I
Yeah.
feel like she's the next in line. So that gives me hope. And, I don't know. We'll see. As this shutdown, I think, is going to tell a lot with this leadership. I really feel like this moment is either make or break for them, and we'll see. But Amy Klobuchar for right now is giving me hope. That's about it.
And I think like the other thing about your background that's so relevant right now is you're an influencer, of course, but you're also a journalist and you won awards for your stories and reporting. And how do you see Democrats' efforts to fight back on two things? One, I recently was writing about sort of Charlie Kirk's legacy, something I think that people miss on the left. Really, I think was less the digital sort of toxic sound bites that pierce through and more, because a lot of people do that more that he built this $100 million national hyper local infrastructure of thousands of chapters of colleges and high schools across the country that really have made a concerted effort to convert and win over young voters to the conservative side. And I feel like the Democrat response to all of that in recent years has been we're losing ground with young voters. We got to get online. We got to do more influencer stuff. And we had things like creators, of which you were one at the DNC. And so many great people were part of that group. My question is that sort of a band-aid solution to some extent, sort of the double down on influencers that we've seen following 2024, where it's a lot of folks that have Democratic base fans kind of following them in the first place, and they're like sharing the Democrat talking points that they hear, and then it's getting engagement. So one might think, oh, 10,000 people like this. But it's like, oh, yeah, like 10,000 of the 200,000 most online Democrats ever liked this. Like, that's not really maybe the metric. What do you see as like the path forward? Is that a good thing and we just need to do some other things? Is it, maybe more of a
Yeah.
negative? And also
I
maybe
mean,
add a little bit on like as a journalist, how you see it
right,
shaping the way
right.
we're doing news.
Well, first and foremost, as journalists, we're we've lost the news, right? Too many journalists, quote unquote, are like pundits and they pretend to be journalists. So that's a problem in itself because Americans don't recognize the difference between a pundit and a journalist. And so I think that journalism is going all over the place. And so that's a scary, scary concept. But when I do win these awards, I win them through the LA Press Club, and it's all the local journalism, and I'm surrounded by nothing but local journalists. That's what gives me hope, right? It's the local newspapers, it's the local channels that are really covering the news that matter. And
Mhm.
I don't know how to infiltrate that with young people because the youth vote has been an issue since like Nixon. They've been trying to get these young people to show up and vote since like Nixon, I think. So that's a very difficult thing. But you are correct in what Charlie Kirk was able to build with infiltrating that system and getting these people engaged and getting these people wanting to vote. I mean, the whole like white male lonely club that he was able to check into, these young white males, that is a very difficult thing. But I will say this, the influencer idea is a great idea, but it's a band-aid and we're not really dealing with the larger issue at hand. The larger issue is there is a disconnect, especially with this youth generation Z and the rest of the America. There's a disconnect and we're not figuring out how to talk to them and get to them without doing like cringe videos on TikTok.
Right,
I mean,
and I think that's the word,
you
right?
know,
Like, cringe. It does come to mind, and, like, it's funny because I'm 31 now, so I'm, like, a little, like but I feel like the influencer world is a little high school-y in a sense,
yeah,
and yet ironically, and I know we're kinda, like, a little bit tangential to it, but it's not the people that would be cool in high school, and I don't mean that to be disparaging, but I
okay.
think it's, like, kind of like this thing that Democrats do where it's like, well, okay, we need influencers to go influence people, but, like, because they have to check all these boxes in some sense. They have to be willing to say what, the Democratic Party wants them to say,
Mhm.
and then, like, maybe they want to be super representative too. Unfortunately, that's not how high school is, right? Like the cool kids are not a Benetton ad necessarily of all, different types of quirky personalities and
Mhm.
all of that. Like, may that person cultivate an audience online? Yes. But in fact, like some of the people that are good at cultivating audiences online since the dawn of cultivating audiences online are a little bit weird, a little bit less socially plugged in. And like that's where they do
Mhm.
their socializing. And so, it's kind of a mismatch in a way that is a bit right idea, right spirit, wrong
Mhm.
execution. And so I do think it's interesting to see so many consultants and so many campaigns continue to think dumping millions of dollars into that is the solution. I think like what works better, and we've seen this on the MAGA side, is somebody like a Jillian Michaels, who honestly I didn't really know too much about until more recently, but who was a trainer on The Biggest Loser, I guess, and
Yeah.
then now she's on CNN, right, spewing White House talking points because she, as this trainer, as this like kind of health nut, had built an audience of hundreds of thousands of followers, a lot of female followers that were listening to her for diet advice and all that stuff, and she's kind of pipelined in through all the RFK back stuff.
Mhm.
Now she's the spokesperson basically for a lot of MAGA issues. And I think finding those types of voices who don't start out as like, I want to be a political
Yeah.
influencer are going to be much more effective at persuading people.
Yeah, I think there's like a money aspect too going along with a lot of these influencers that people don't want to talk about, right? I think that there's a lot of influencers
Let's
now
talk about it.
who want to make money and make your money. We all make money doing what we're doing, but that's just it. If you started this because you want to be famous and you want to make money, then you should this is then go make your money, but you need to get out of the way because the rest of us are
Right.
really trying to make a difference and really trying to break through to get people to show up to vote so that we can win. Right?
No, totally. So
So,
since you brought it up, I was gonna let you
yeah.
off the hook, but what do you think of this sort of whole chorus, dark money, sort of a couple weeks ago, just to catch folks up, there was reporting in Wired about a program funded by a dark money group called Chorus that was basically, which I think is honestly somewhat of a clever idea,
Mhm.
training influencers, paying them $8,000 a month, up to that at least, to attend daily sessions, learn how to produce better content. And I think here's where they go wrong, like, and get some talking points and sort of like news and stories of the day that they should cover. Now, there was this quote unquote scandal of it was that they didn't disclose this to their followers' audience, or not all of them did. And some of them disclosed they were in this program, but not the funding sources. And I think there is a lot of benefit of the doubt, honestly, to offer to fellow influencers, because I think, especially some of my favorite ones that I noted that are in that program, their backgrounds are incredible American stories of folks that came from very hard backgrounds, overcame a ton, and suddenly, were able to capture the voice of the Biden White House and all of that, and were uplifted. And then to expect those folks to understand that they should be a leader of best practices on disclosures around dark money and influencing in this sort of unregulated space is ridiculous. I do think the government should regulate this space, of course,
Mhm.
but I'm curious what you think of that whole dynamic.
I think first and foremost, each its own. Like, make your money, do your
Yeah.
thing, right? More power to you. I've seen people interact with Chorus in a very positive way, and their videos are like fly, and they're really able to get their videos out there and reach to millions of people, and I think that's fantastic. I think there's always aspects of anything when we're talking about these kind of deals that's going to be a little bit murky, and there's going to be questions surrounding it. I just think that we have to realize that Republicans are doing this over and
Right.
over. So it's not like
Totally.
we're the only group doing that. And they do it on a whole other level.
And
I
they
mean,
do
we're
it better.
talking
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
more.
Candace Owens and all of them they made millions of dollars very quickly. And so, I think we have to be in this game and we have to be prepared. And that's what Chorus believes that they're doing is preparing people. I think more along the lines of what happens is unfortunately is a lot of content creators get stuck in like echo chambers.
Yeah.
And so they don't break out of that. They think they're a really big deal because they have like a million followers or something, but it's just like a constant echo chamber. And I'm like,
Right.
no. Or they're doing things like for clicks, right? They're saying they're going on and on and on about Trump for clicks. And like, that's not helping anyone.
Well, and I think a lot of times it's like they have an audience, but it's actually not the audience they purport to represent. And I think that's especially true of a lot of the younger influencers. Like,
Yeah.
it's like stuff that, Would my grandma find it charming if I showed her this like 20-year-old college kid saying this about Trump? Sure. Like, do other 20-year-olds find it that way? Probably not. And I think then it's like, oh, but it's going viral. So Democrats have checked this box. Like, not really, though. And I will say, to each their own is a great way to think of it because I don't really judge the people that took, take pay for their content. I just feel like, and I'm sure you have a similar experience being a journalist, I do other stuff in this space, really. Like, I'm not really consider myself an influencer. I'm an attorney. I
Mhm.
do a bunch of comms consulting stuff like that. And I go on TV. I wouldn't want people to ever say, like, you took money from XYZ source and then said this on air. So I have my own sort of standards about it. But I also think that, you know, it's created more the issue to me is it's created this industry that is such a money suck for the Democratic Party. And it's very similar to all this text that I'm sure everyone watching has gotten so many of. There's been a lot of reporting on these intermediary groups that basically every PAC on the left is giving 60%, some of these
Yeah.
people, of their operating budget to those groups that have these contacts that are blasting these Democrats for money, $5 for all these groups every day. And they're spending most of their money on that. So then you're not really spending the money on doing the work that you're raising the money to do or what the mission is. And a good example of that is David Hogg's
Mhm.
Leaders We Deserve. There's a lot of reporting about
Yeah.
like, wow, they are really not using this money effectively. They barely
Mhm.
doled it out. So I think this is yet another case of like folks feeling like they're doing something good. And especially, not to pick on anyone, but I saw some folks going like, yet another influencer's like, I'm taking a bus, like to go around the country and change hearts and minds. Like, why
Yeah.
though? Like, you're a random 19-year-old. Like, what do you like? We don't need you raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, like to pay yourself, first of all, but also then to go around the country. Like, you're the one that's going to convince Trump
Yeah.
supporters across the country, like, on the brat bus? I don't think so. Like,
Right.
we tried that, like, not to
Right.
be mean,
Right.
but so it's definitely there's a lot off with it, and I think, like, part of the problem is maybe that Democrats aren't that good, and I know you have a weekly show, you talk about all these things as well, like, having the conversations that need to be had to say a few of these truths, like, not to be mean, not to be disparaging, not to make it personal, but to say, like, "Look, like, here's our goal, it's to win." So, like,
Yeah.
feelings are important, like, and all that,
Right.
but how do we get over the finish line? Like, so I do think that's sort of interesting to see.
Yeah, I just think that there's very much a disconnect. There's like a content world and then there's the real world, right? I think that Democratic Party is looking at content to be like, this is our savior. We're gonna like you said, spend all this money, and it's just a piece. You still got to do the ground game. You still got to do phone banking. You still got to do all those old school things that really do matter. I mean, there's a group here in Los Angeles, and the reason I know about it is because Pelosi is attached to it, but they do remarkable work. They do like 100,000 phone bank calls when
Wow.
something like when there's like the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, they called into Wisconsin 100,000 a week. I mean, that matters. Those type of things still matter. So yes, what we do, but we also do other things, like you said, is important, but so is the old school way of doing things. All of that is important. And I feel like not everyone should be a content creator in
Right.
politics. Like we need lawyers out there. We need lawyers working pro bono for immigration cases, or we need, not everyone needs to be in this battle. Like, but I feel like everyone it's getting overly saturated as well.
Well, and I think, it is sort of that thing like we can all relate to. Like, it's fun to go viral. It's more exciting than doing the work sometimes of like showing up at a place and actually helping somebody for no attention. But like we need to do that. Like and I think like it used to be the case when early on, like early Twitter days, when verification and blue badges were like such a big deal and all of that, like as much as it's like gatekeeping and that's not always good, I think you did have more of an environment where it was like, this random person has gone viral and built a following of hundreds of thousands of people because they're the number one leading expert on XYZ topic. And they've like digested that into relatable content to share online. Or same with a lot of attorneys and federal prosecutors that were early
Mhm.
days on those websites. Or like campaign experts, all of it. Now it's like anyone that's built a following in kind of reverse order, the campaigns are like, oh, you have
Yeah.
200,000 followers, like come do my comms, come do my social
Right.
media. Like that's I think on comms you can get away with it. On some of the other stuff, it's like, Well,
Yeah.
ideally, like, it would be a lawyer respond like, the number of times I've seen somebody, which it cracks me up, like, these influencers, anytime there's a Trump lawsuit related, they're like, "Discovery's gonna be crazy." It's like, you don't know it. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's been 1 minute. You
Right.
don't know anything about this case. Like,
Right.
please
Right.
stop.
I know.
Um,
It's
and
made
things
everyone
like
feel
that.
like they're experts in the field. They're all experts in the field and they all know. And it's like, listen, at the end of the day, I stick to what I know. I know the Senate and I know the House. That's what I really know. I hardly ever talk about Trump, and that's where I break it down. I'm not going to pretend I don't talk foreign policy, like it's not my realm. So I think to each its own, everyone do your thing, but it's not the end all say all. I just think it's a piece of the puzzle that we need to win.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for your time. Where can folks find you and keep updated on all your work?
OG of the HRC on every social media outlet. I've kept that gem because Hillary is the original. So, OG of the HRC. I'm on YouTube. I'm just not on Twitter, basically.